Thank you very much for providing me a floor. It's a huge honor for me to address to this distinguished audience. Our world has become very fast, extremely complex and interconnected. The future of Europe is uncertain and not guaranteed. It will be necessary to fight for it. I am a human rights lawyer, and I have been applying the law to defend people and human dignity for many years. At present, I and other Ukrainian human rights colleagues are doing our job in the circumstances when the law doesn't work. 9 years ago, the revolution of dignity took place in Ukraine, and the authoritarian regime collapsed. Ukrainians got a chance to build a country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating. In order to stop us on this way, 9 years ago, Russia started a war, occupied Crimea and Donbas, and last year extended this war to the large-scale invasion. There is no justification for Russia's action. There is no purpose to force people go down to the basement, to order them to elect several volunteers, and no purpose in shooting them. There is no purpose to have a fun using the tanks to fire on people on the bicycles, whose bodies lay scattered around the streets until the liberation. There is no purpose in breaking someone's house, killing the owner, and raping the wife next to her 9-year-old child. There is no purpose in shooting a 14-year-old boy in a close range who was just playing with his ball in the yard. And there is no military necessity in doing this. Russians have done these horrible things only because they could. This again raises a simple question: how we will protect people, their rights, their freedom, their dignity in 21st century? Can we rely on the law, or only weapons matter? Europe and the world should respond to the challenges of the present. It is the determination to act that defines a civilization that has a future. First, freedom and democracy must be protected. The problem is not only that the space of freedom in authoritarian countries has narrowed to the size of the prison cell. The problem is that even in developed democracies, the power that casts doubt on the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights gets stronger. There are reasons for this. The coming generations replace those that survived the Second World War. They inherited the values of democracies for their parents, so they began to take rights and freedoms for granted. People are increasingly manifesting themselves not as carriers of these values, but as their consumers. They understand freedom as choosing cheeses in supermarket. Therefore, they are ready to exchange freedom for economic benefits, promises of security, or their own comfort. Developed democracies are accustomed to concessions to dictatorships. They forgot that state that killed journalists, jailed activists, and dispersed peaceful demonstrations pose a threat not only to their own citizens. Such states pose a threat to entire region and to peace in the world as a whole. Human rights progress and peace are inextricably linked. Freedom and human rights can't be achieved once and for all. We make our own choices every day. Human rights should be no less important factor in political decision-making than economic benefits or security. The values of modern civilization must be protected. Second, unpunished evil grows. The obvious example is Russia, which has consistently destroyed its own civil society. However, developed democracies have turned a blind eye to this for a long time. They continue to shake hands with the Russian leadership, build gas pipelines, and conduct business as usual. For decades, Russian troops committed crimes in various countries. They have always enjoyed impunity. The world didn't react properly even to the annexation of Crimea, which became the first precedent in post-war Europe. Russia believed that it could do whatever it wanted. Today, Russia is trying to convince the world that democracy, rule of law, and human rights are fake values because they do not protect anyone during the war. Russia normalizes evil and makes a common practice of deliberate destructions of residential buildings, churches, schools, hospitals, shooting of evacuation corridors, imprisonment of people, infiltration camps, forced deportations, abductions of children, torture, murder, rape in occupied territories. Russia did it in Chechnya. Russia did it in Syria. Russia is doing it in Ukraine. This impunity has a long tradition. While Nazi war criminals were punished at the Nuremberg trials, the Soviet totalitarian Gulag was never convicted or punished. And that is why this is not a war between two states. This is a war between two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. Whether we have the courage to admit it or not, this war has no borders. Russia is fighting against the values that defines modern civilization. Third, Ukraine must win. Russia must lose. People in Ukraine want peace like no one else. But peace doesn't come when a country which was invaded stops fighting. That it's not peace, but occupation. Occupation is another form of the war. Russia unleashed terror in the occupied territories to keep them under control. The Russian military exterminated local active people, mayors, public figures, journalists, volunteers, priests, artists, etc. People are living in gray zone. They have no opportunity to defend their rights, their freedoms, their property, their lives, and their loved ones. Occupation is not about changing one state flag to another. The occupation means torture, deportations, forced adoptions, ban of identity, filtration camps, and mass graves. People must not be left to die and to be tortured in the occupied territories. People's lives can't be a political compromise. Sustainable peace is the freedom to live without fear and to have a long-term perspective. Calls for Ukraine to stop defending itself and to satisfy Russia's imperial appetites are not just wrong. They are immoral. Russia is a modern, archaic empire. An empire has a center but no borders. An empire always strives to expand. Therefore, if Russia is not stopped in Ukraine, it will go further. When the full-scale invasion began, democratic countries said, let's help Ukraine not to lose. However, it's a time to change this paradigm and help Ukraine to win quickly. Because there is a significant difference between let's help Ukraine not to lose and let's help Ukraine to win quickly. The difference has practical measured in types of weapons, speed of decisions, and severity of sanctions. Democracy must be properly armed. We don't have time. For us, Ukrainians, time converts into numerous deaths at the front lines, numerous deaths in occupied territories, numerous deaths in deep rear. Fourth, a new architecture of peace and security is required. The international system of peace and security is no longer functioning. The UN system, created after World War II by its victors, established unjustified preferences for individual countries. Now we have a situation where a permanent member of Security Council can launch a full-scale act of aggression and systematically commit war crimes against the civilian population in order to break people's resistance and occupy the country. And the entire architecture of international treaties and international organizations can't stop it. If the international law and international order are not restored in the nearest future, it will have negative consequences for the world development. We may find ourselves in the future where states with a powerful military potential and nuclear weapon will dictate their rules to the entire international community and even forcibly change internationally recognized borders. Such a world will be dangerous for everyone without any exceptions. It is necessary to take responsibility and launch the international system reform. It should protect people from wars and authoritarian regimes. Human rights must take a central place in this system. And fifth, people matter. I have been working with law for many years, and I know for sure that if you can't rely on legal instruments, you can still rely on people. We are used to thinking within such categories as states and intergovernmental organization. Nevertheless, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Ordinary people have much more impact than they think. The voice of millions of people in different countries can change world history faster than the intervention of the United Nations. When on my way here, I received the news that my friend, the Ukrainian writer Victoria Melina, had been seriously injured after a Russian missile had hit a cafe in Kramatorsk. Now she is in the intensive care unit, and doctors are fighting for her life. Victoria regularly traveled to the east to document Russian war crimes. She knows that she can't change the war by herself, but without her efforts, nothing will change. What I want to say with this example: I would never wish any nation to go through our experience, because war is something horrible. But these dramatic times provide us an opportunity to reveal the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make a difficult but right choices, and to help each other. Now, maybe like never before, we are acutely aware what does it mean to be a human. We are fighting for values which have no limitation in national borders. Freedom is such values. Solidarity is such values. We live in a very interconnected world, and the only spread of freedom make our world safer. Thank you.